Welcome to the Fora Podcast, a space where real people share real stories. Every episode opens a door into someone else's world with unexpected turns and honest moments that spark connection. I'm Cheryl Krupe, mom, writer, athlete, and artist. I'm curious about what connects us, and I believe every person holds something unexpected and beautiful.
And I'm Keenan Comer, dad and coach. I'm passionate about doing hard things. My favorite way to learn is by listening to people and their stories.
All right. So, Keenan, this is our first episode. Let's share a bit of what it was like to get in front of the mic for the first time.
Yeah, I think we can reflect on the things that surprised us, both about his story and about recording in general, the things that moved us, and what it was like to be in a podcast studio with a guest for the first time, trying to actually create something.
A lot of unexpected stuff happened.
So many unexpected things.
So many unexpected things. So what surprised you the most?
I think what surprised me the most was the tension, right? Us working together as a team. So that's like new interviewing somebody. We've been practicing talking to each other a lot, just like putting on headphones in the mic and just talking to each other. At that time, we didn't have that. Well, did we? I don't remember. Anyway.
No, we did not.
No, we didn't. But we had been talking a lot and getting comfortable and like recording ourselves in voice memos and stuff. But to get in the studio in front of a mic with headphones, no, we didn't have that. Sorry. No, it's not that. What the thing is, it's just being in the studio itself because we didn't have the equipment. I keep forgetting that. And then trying to also like coax a story out of somebody. It was challenging. And I feel like the mistake I made was that I was trying to coax a story out of somebody instead of just talking to them and letting them get fired up about it.
Yeah, it was a lot harder than I thought. Also, we just picked a proximate person who was available, my son, and I thought that was going to be a softball, and it was not. It was not. And the story that we prepped was not the story that came out, and there were moments when we were all looking at each other like, now what? I've had friends since who have given feedback who told me they were imagining when they were listening to the recording what it like, had I heard this before? Mm-hmm. It's interesting because some of the feedback is, it sounded like a story that you talked about a lot, but we did not.
Well, there were details of the story, or there were things that we had spoken to him about, like going to New Zealand and this trip and the things that he was doing there. But then when what got unearthed, we were totally unprepared for where he went with that.
Yeah,
and about how he was affected by. How he was affected basically like by life events leading up to what we thought was going to be the event that was the spark for change, right? Which is that trip to New Zealand.
Yeah. It's interesting. We both talked after we recorded it that although we did go somewhere really interesting and go pretty deep, that we entirely missed the story, in the sense that like, Keenan, there were parts of the story that really resonated with you and you didn't talk about it, nor did I ever say that he was my son.
Nope. Nor
did we actually even say our names. I listened to the recording today and we never introduced ourselves.
That's so funny. Yeah, a lot of the feedback we got was like, if we didn't know you personally, we wouldn't know who the hell you people were.
Right.
Yeah. That's so funny. I didn't realize we never even said our name.
I listened to it twice. We never introduced ourselves.
So funny. Well, I'm Keenan. Yeah. By the way, and this is my co-host Cheryl.
I'm Cheryl.
Yeah. So, I think what I was so surprised by was how, like I said, the tension, but just like how. I think part of it was the moment. It was like we had worked up to all of this. We've been planning and thinking and scheduling and messing with technical things and recording, and then we got to a point where like we just have to do it. And then getting in the room, it was kind of like, oh, we're doing it now. And then it turned into this thing that we weren't ready to capture. So use the analogy you used. Was it an interview with
I listened to a podcast from an archery coach, and he talked about shooting blank bails, basically bails without targets on them. And we were so busy, I think, looking for the target, like looking for a story that we can make sense of and aiming at that, that it sounded a little like an interrogation, and that in the end, we both felt like we just grazed the bale.
Yeah.
Just grazed the bale in the sense that we did get a story out of it, but it wasn't what it could be. It wasn't the story of a young man going through transformation, and you, Keenan, a man who's 10 years past that, who identified with a lot of the story, and me, the mom, who got dragged to the bottom in the course of that story, who was hearing some of it, and certainly all of it put together into a cohesive narrative for the first time.
Yeah.
Really, there was a big opportunity there that we didn't quite get.
Yeah. That thing of grazing the bale. I'll go into that. You explained that very quickly. So, you told me this. So we think in archery they shoot bales, like bales of hay to stop the arrow. There's typically a target on there, obviously, and they're trying to hit the center, the bullseye. But in training and practice, they'll take a bale that's just blank.
Yeah, it just has no target on it, and the reason why is that having that target is distracting from learning the different pieces of the movement. So if you're looking at, I don't even know the right terms, but like drawing back, the part of the bow that you draw back, or the finger motions of releasing, that you have to do that over and over and over again to have it be just automatic, so that you can put the pieces together and actually aim. And essentially that's what we're doing. Every single time we set up, we're like, we have some malfunction with the equipment, where we forget to turn something on, we run out of batteries, we forget something. So that's basically what we're doing. Yeah.
And that's what's really surprising about this endeavor too, is all of the work that goes behind the scenes to get it done to the caliber that we're trying to achieve is really tough. Like we put in so much work on the sort of creative side of it, but even just the technical aspect of it. Experimenting with equipment, talking to people about what they could use, seeing what people use, going around it. So this is borrowed equipment from a coworker of mine, Nick Mula over at Courage Fitness Durham, right? Shout out to them for sponsoring this podcast by letting us borrow this equipment. But yeah, learning this equipment, as you know, this is like what this equipment is. I looked it up on Reddit. It's like it's a pretty basic, very simple, straightforward thing, but to still take, there's a learning curve. And it's like you get in and you're ready to record, and then you're like, wait, hold on, I got to fix this. I got to do this. Oh, crap, what did I forget? Or all this. All right, we're good. 30 minutes later.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
I want to give a shout out to Queenie's too, because we're recording in the Queenie's free podcast studio in downtown Durham, which is a huge gift as well.
Oh, it is. Yeah. Like, what an asset to have in our town, to just be able to go into somewhere that's, I mean, honestly, they're through 2 double doors. They have glass windows through them. I can see people living it up at a bar right now, and we can't hear them at all, and it's amazing.
It's pretty amazing.
It's pretty cool.
I want to bring us back to our purpose, though, because we set out to do this because we believed that the world would benefit from more connection. And looking at this first episode, Keenan, is there a part of that, like the memory of that experience, where you felt most connected, like where you felt that flow moment that's connected to our purpose?
I think when he hit what the title of the podcast now is don't let fear and common sense get in the way. I thought that was really profound. And what was so cool about that is that he's 22. He just graduated from college. He's got a summer job at a camp. It's not his career. So he's in transition. He's figuring out where he's trying to orient himself, figure out where he's going. I think just that statement, living by that, is going to be a foundational part of who he is and what he does. And it's something he said to himself. I don't wonder if he said it out loud or who he said it to, but to put it out there to his mom, to a stranger, to the world, and to basically like declare like, this is how I'm going to live my life. I think that was a really, really cool moment to be part of.
Yeah. It was pretty great.
Yeah. That was, how about you?
I listened to it again today, and what sort of brought awe to me is, it's hard to even put words to it. Like, I have been parenting this child for 22 years. I didn't talk about this at all in the podcast. And you have so many hopes and dreams, and you want them to be safe, and you want them to be grounded, and you want them to somehow bring the values that you've tried to live to their life. And when I heard him talking about his journey from dark to light and back again, it was beautiful. I felt proud of what I had done, what my husband and I, Damien, and his father and I have done. And I felt like he's ready to fledge.
I love that.
It was amazing.
What an incredible experience. Yeah, so we hope that you enjoy this podcast episode with Emmett. It's definitely not our best work. It was our first work. And we're actually really proud of it and what we were able to accomplish. And we're also really grateful to Emmett for sharing his story.
Yeah, it was beautiful.
Enjoy. Our guest for this episode is Emmett Makarushka, a recent university grad who experienced a change that will affect the way he lives his life and treats people. Often, the biggest lessons come from the time of the biggest change. That is what his story is about. Hey, Emmett, thank you for being here. We're really excited to hear the story you're going to tell. You're at a point of transition, just graduated last week?
Yep.
Cool. So yeah, tell us about that and the changes you're going through.
I think that at this point in my life, I'm definitely kind of undetermined long term, and I'm not really sure where I want to go, but I have a lot of interests, and I think this next year I'll be trying to focus on diving into some of the things that I'm curious about and seeing what is most attractive in terms of a long-term career.
Can you tell us a little bit about what's pulling you? Like, what are the things that rank on that worth checking out list?
I think the idea of doing some sort of work that's mostly outside, and maybe adventure-based kind of stuff is a really attractive prospect to me. But additionally, I think that I have a lot of curiosity when it comes to cinema and film, so I'm definitely interested in exploring that as well. But yeah, farming will definitely come up because for the next year I'll be hopping around to different farms in New Zealand to learn about different agricultural techniques and hopefully meet some interesting people that may be able to give me some sort of direction.
Speaking of change and New Zealand, this won't be your first time going to New Zealand, correct?
No, this definitely won't be. I went for about 3.5 weeks in January this year.
Mm-hmm.
As we were prepping for this podcast, you talked about that trip as being a catalyst for change in a time that there's already a lot of change going on. I know that's the heart of the story that you talked to us about wanting to tell. Maybe you can set us up by sharing with us what was going on with you before that trip to New Zealand. What did your day look like? What did your life look like?
I think that although I've had a relatively short life so far, I think it's probably been one of the darkest portions of my life prior to going to New Zealand. I felt very alone and not like myself. I think I had been gradually killing off little bits of my personality and who I was because I was angry at the world, and I felt like suppressing them somehow would make me more protected or defensive, guarded against things that could hurt me. So by hiding pieces of myself from the rest of the world, I ended up hiding them from myself as well and kind of separating from the person I was happy being.
So on a day-to-day basis, what did that look like?
I think that for me, I would definitely find myself sleeping in to super late parts of the day. Sometimes it would be night before I'd wake up, and spending a lot of time in front of screens and kind of disconnected from people. But yeah.
Where was that coming from? Where was the loneliness, and what were you guarding yourself from?
I think I had gone through a series of pretty major upsets in my life, I guess. It started when I got hit by a car, and I got pretty depressed from having to sit around, but I was also very angry at the person who had done it to me, and I think that anger kind of started to take over who I was. And I was focused on that instead of all the things that I could be doing with my life. And I got sucked into this pit that kept kind of piling more stuff onto it, whether it was another injury or difficulty in classes or something like that. I definitely started digging a deeper hole.
What happened? I didn't know you'd been hit by a car.
Yeah, I was riding a board, like a electric skateboard, and I got hit and run by a girl on my college campus. And the school failed to hold her accountable, and that made me feel, I guess, like justice hadn't been served. And I focused a lot on that and put a lot of my energy into kind of feeling hateful towards her. And it definitely cast a shadow over my day-to-day life. I spent a lot of time thinking about that instead of positive stuff, and it took over.
So you got hit by a car on campus by someone who was attending school there. Mm-hmm. You knew who it was or found out who it was. How bad were you hurt?
I broke my foot, so it was immobilizing, but it wasn't the end of the world.
But nothing happened.
Yeah, nothing happened. And I didn't really feel like...
And she just left.
Yeah, she left the scene. I didn't really feel like going through the legal process. I hated thinking about it in the first place, so thinking about it more in a courtroom didn't seem like an appealing thing to do.
So, I know we've talked about that experience more than once, and I know it was kind of one of those sliding doors, sort of one path or another diverging, and there was a lot of thought around accountability. I'm curious, transitioning into your own transformation, that seems like a very crossroadsy experience. How does that play into New Zealand and the changes that you felt with that journey?
Well, I think that after I got hit by a car, I stopped being able to differentiate between my anger towards her and just like my other feelings. And that anger started to become most of my personality and kind of take over who I was. And for a long time, things would make me mad. Like pretty much everything would make me mad purely because I felt like that girl hadn't been held accountable, but I wasn't able to recognize that that was anger that was separate from the rest of my feelings. So heading towards New Zealand, I think that it was the first time in a very long time that I was almost forcefully sucked out of looking at myself, and I was forced into looking at a bigger picture and kind of being able to step away from the version of myself that I was prior to that was really refreshing. I think also I was surrounded by people who had gotten kind of accustomed to me being mad, and in New Zealand it was a random group of people, so it gave me a brief opportunity to be someone completely different and to return to that happy version of myself because I didn't feel like there was an expectation for me to be angry.
So bring us to New Zealand with you. Like you're in the state, fly the other side of the world, and what happens?
Well, for a long time, I think something that had been fueling my idleness and anger was that I had been heavily using weed, and it was influencing a lot of parts of my life. I wasn't able to get up in the morning and function well, and I was like mentally foggy, and I didn't feel motivated to improve anything. I felt comfortable where I was, and numbing with a substance made that even easier. But in New Zealand, I didn't have access to that, and I think that for the first time in a very long time, I was able to breathe again, both literally and figuratively. I think I got a chance to see the damage that being angry and smoking had done to me, and yeah.
You're also separate from screens, right?
That was a big part of it. I mean, we would get up early and go and do activities all day, and by the time it was the end of the day, we'd be exhausted. So there wasn't much room for any of that, and that super fast shift in my lifestyle had a pretty profound impact.
It wasn't, when you say doing activities, you were there working on a project. You weren't a tourist there.
Sometimes we were doing more touristy things. We'd do a lot of hiking. The focus of the class was ecotourism, but we weren't trying to be ecotourists. We were trying to learn about ecotourism. So there was a focus on service learning as well.
So can you describe the activities or events that you did and what you learned?
Well, for our kind of main projects, we were focused on trying to revitalize and regrow native plants and kind of get rid of all these invasive species. So we did a lot of trail work and clearing plants that weren't supposed to be there, planting new plants that were supposed to be there, and setting up ways to protect those plants from animals and other insects like that would hurt them.
At the beginning of this interview, you talked about the feelings that you had when you were at your college, living your day-to-day life after that experience getting hit by a car. When you were in New Zealand and you were doing, you were free of screens, you were free of substances, what did that feel like? You think about, again, like a thing you did or a thing you saw.
It felt very vivid, I guess. I think that for a long time, I had just been so oblivious to the rest of the world and to the way that the air smelled and how it felt to be outside in the sun and all of that being reintroduced to it made it feel super alive. Living just felt very surreal in a lot of ways.
So I'm curious, the life that you're describing before going to New Zealand sounds pretty typical of your peers. When you think about what you learned in this clarifying experience, how does this relate to what you feel like a college campus experience is like?
I don't think my experience in college was at all typical. I think that the majority of my peers were probably feeling a lot better, engaged, and weren't isolating as much. So, I don't know. I feel like it definitely was not standard the way I was behaving.
How do you know that?
Well, looking at the way my peers acted, I think it was pretty evident that, they were functioning way better. They were going to classes, getting up, not doing drugs all day. It was definitely more of a me thing.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting to think, though, just by virtue of the way that you were living, anyone else who was also experiencing that probably wasn't out there either.
Yeah, that's pretty accurate.
My intuition is that you'd probably be surprised at how many people feel the way you do.
Mm-hmm.
I can look back to points in my life where I was doing the exact same thing at a very similar point in time. I think your experience isn't as unique as you think. Gen Z, people refer them as the loneliest generation. Being an adolescent and a teenager through COVID, more prevalence of screens and more powerful social media. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it's definitely an accurate assessment of our generation, I think. I didn't live this life, but when I hear about the ways people were connected 30, 40 years ago, it sounds a lot like there was a level of wanting to be in a space with other people that just kind of doesn't exist anymore. I think when I hear people who have graduated or adults kind of talk about their experience in college, I hear things like the activities they'd go and do with their friends, and I think getting people to kind of be together and want to put in the effort to be in the same place at the same time and maybe disengage from screens is pretty difficult for my generation, and it becomes more of a special occasion than a common occurrence.
Yeah, I'm just reflecting on my own college experience, and we certainly didn't have it all figured out, but we were mad. We thought we knew how the world worked, and we were just ready to get out there and take our swing at it. I miss that for the current generation. If the two things that I'm hearing you, that I don't hear what you're saying, is passion and purpose. Coming back to your New Zealand trip, you're being very candid about what your experience was like before, and just how clear being in an entirely different context made you. I'm just curious, looking back, it's about 6 months later, what does it mean to you?
Well, I think that for me, it's definitely a major turning point in my life, and things started to improve afterwards. So I think it was a very necessary forced transition almost. Right before going, I think I was pretty nervous to go, not because I was scared of the experience, but because I was scared of leaving what I was so used to and so comfortable with. The idea of not being able to end my nights in front of a TV or smoking was kind of weird. I hadn't been able to distance myself from those things in years, and I had become so used to them that not having them felt really scary. And by the time I got on the plane, there wasn't really a turning back, but it was very necessary.
And if you look at how you see your life now and imagining forward to what could be coming in this next trip to New Zealand, are there things that you're grateful for or that you're curious about?
I mean, yeah, it's an opportunity a lot of people don't get the chance to experience, so I'm very grateful that I am one of the people who got to do that. And I also think that the fact that I'm going back is another amazing and rare experience that I hope to take advantage of.
Can you tell me more about what you were doing there? Like, were you running a chainsaw? Were you hunting down invasive species? What did that look like?
Well, on one farm that we went to, it definitely stood out to me above all the others. And we started by digging out this section of dirt to create this shed space. We needed to lower the ground to make the roof feel higher. But after that, it was my job to chop wood and make a bunch of fires. What stood out to me about that experience, I was there, and it was my job to make these 5 fires. And I chopped all the wood for them, and after doing so, we used those fires to make our dinner, and we just cooked a bunch of pizzas. And we had a circle afterwards where we kind of decompressed and evaluated our day. And in that circle, the owner of the property told us the things that stood out to him during the day, and one thing he mentioned was about me, and he had called me this Maori phrase, I think it's ahika, and it means to keep one's fire burning. And he gave me a lot of credit for starting and maintaining the 5 fires that fed us. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like the focus of my life wasn't on me. I'd done something for someone else that really resonated with them. And in Maori culture, fire is definitely a source of union, a place that people gather around and connect, share stories, eat food. So in that community, doing that work was very impactful. But for me, being able to take care of somebody other than myself was very powerful.
When you came back to college, you came back to the States and showed up for your next semester, it sounds like you were quite changed. You knew you were changed. Did your peers see that in you?
I'm not sure if they did because, well, I think my peers that had gone on the trip with me, they didn't know me before, so they didn't have the context. I think the people that recognized the change the most were probably my advisor who went on the trip with me and some of the other professors. We had to write these reflections, and I was pretty honest in most of them, and I think that they heard a lot of what I've said today in those reflections, and it definitely made a pretty big impact on them and their perception of me.
So I'm a millennial, and that term came around. I remember first hearing it when I was a sophomore in college, and the description of a millennial was outspoken and self-centered. We were considered the most self-centered generation. It sounds like what you described was you spent a lot of time thinking about how you felt, and that made you unhappy, so you suppressed the way you felt. Then you got an opportunity to do something else for others, and you got recognized for it, and that was a big turning point for you, or a catalyst for thinking about yourself in a different way. Is that true?
Yeah.
What do you think that means for you moving forward?
I think that, it highlighted the impact of doing things for other people. And I think that also those 4 weeks that I was there gave me a reason to want to change. Feeling so good felt so different from what I was used to, and I didn't want that to stop. So when I got back to the U.S., I really wanted to find ways to keep feeling that way. And I think a big thing that shifted for me was like how I used my day. When I'd get up, I started trying to be more active and be in the sun as much as possible. And I started to feel like the days that were rainy or darker felt pretty crappy. And I think a lot of who I was started to become more dependent on what I did with my day and if I felt productive and I felt like I had been outside and gotten fresh air. I think I started to feel a lot more alive.
You said, when I got back to school, people told me I looked more alive than I ever had. How did you feel when you heard that?
I think that it was good feedback. I mean, it reflected what I had been feeling, so having people tell me that reaffirmed a lot of the things I had experienced. It made them a reality, I guess.
You talked about feeling good. Describe what feeling good is to you and what that means for you.
Well, on days that I'm feeling bad, I think that my mind is pretty occupied by hate. And on those days, I walk by someone, or I'll ask someone on the street, or just see something on the internet, and immediately my instinct will be judgment, and whether it's judging how they look or the person that they are, I'll default to disliking them. And on good days, I think that it's very different, and I try to assume the best in people, and I think the days that my mind's occupied by hate, I spend a lot of energy on useless thoughts and focused on just getting more angry, essentially. I feed the version of myself that doesn't feel good.
You talked a lot about the days you feel bad. To describe the days you feel good, can you try to do the inverse?
I mean, on good days, I think that probably just there's a desire to want to be with others and a longing for connection, and I usually am able to find some way of getting that connection, and when I do, it just feels satisfying. The day feels more complete. I feel like I can go to bed having done something good, and I think that usually good days, I'll also give myself some time to think about the day and all the aspects of it, whereas on bad days I'll focus more on the negatives.
Do you have strategy in mind to help you have more of the good days?
There's a few things. Forcing myself to do something that I don't want to do each day is usually pretty helpful, whether it's getting up earlier than I want to, or going to some event just to be around other people and be engaged, getting out of my own space and doing something that just isn't what I really want to be doing. I find that it usually makes my day feel more complete, but also takes the focus off of what I want. Also, good days usually include the outdoors and the sun, but yeah.
A lot of what you talked about, in my mind, falls into the category of learning how to live as an independent person. And you are in the midst of one of life's biggest changes. For some people, that's college graduation. For others, it's at a different point. But it's basically where you stop following what other people set forward for you to do, and you pick your first own thing. And you seem pretty confident about what you're picking. And I'm curious if you have advice for the year behind you, the next year of kids who are coming to that point where they're making their first big choice that is their choice and not whatever dance steps society gave them. What advice would you give them?
Something that I try to apply to my life pretty daily is to not allow fear and common sense to hold you back. I like that phrase because I feel like my path is pretty different from a lot of people's, and a lot of times there's hesitation that I feel in kind of, will this work? Should I try this? Should I go out on this limb and explore something new that the majority of my peers aren't doing? And as difficult as it can be, I think that pushing yourself to try things that scare you or to try things that people think are crazy and different, it's super important. It gives you a sense of individuality. And if you allow common sense and these ideas that we've given ourselves to control and dictate the direction of your life, you probably will end up in a very similar spot to a lot of other people. And for me, that's not something I desire. I want there to be differences in my life from other people. So when I encounter stuff that scares me or things that seem intimidating, I try to push through them and attack them.
You get out there and get after it, and in a year or two we'll have you back on the podcast and hear what the next chapter is. You are our first guest. We imagine closing with an iconic question, and this is it. What do you wish people would ask you?
I think that I wish people would ask me to ask them things. I know that that's a reflection of the question, but it's so instinctive for me to make a judgment of somebody or to come into a space with an idea of who someone is. And what I've found is that I'm usually wrong about the person, and my judgments are usually pretty inaccurate. But I'm so quick to make them that I don't get the chance to meet the person. And I wish that more people would force me into a situation where I'd have to explore who they are. So, yeah, I think I wish people would ask me to ask them about them.
That sounds like coming full circle. The big change you made was thinking about yourself and doing things for yourself and then doing things for others. That comes from knowing what they need, and you have to ask those questions. I think it's a skill that a lot of people lack, but it's one that can be developed. And I think it's cool that at such a young age, you're realizing that that's really important.
Thanks for telling us your story.